Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. On today's video, we explore some New York ghost stories that will keep you up at night. Now make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. Years ago, I worked in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan, and to the best of my knowledge, the building in question didn't have any supernatural or paranormal history. But it's New York City, so who knows? And I've never had any kind of paranormal experience either. I'm not even sure if I would classify the following account as such. Instead, I've mentally filed the experience away as something weird that happened to me a few years ago. Back then, I worked in a hybrid building, so apartments and offices alike coexisted under the same roof. My particular workspace was divided up into a series of small offices, a common area, and a section in the back where my boss stayed when he was in the city. It's an area I called the living quarters. The company was small and the culture was loose. Since different employees worked internationally, we were allowed to make our own hours as long as we were all responsible with work output and keeping up with goals and milestones. I prefer to work early, very early, as in starting at 6:30 in the morning and leaving at 3:30 in the afternoon. Needless to say, I'm alone in the office for several hours a week. This particular morning in question, my boss was traveling in Europe, and no one else was in yet, except for me. Outside my door was the large common area, where 4 towering floor-to-ceiling windows opened the north-facing wall to a view of the city. The morning sun started peeking over the skyline. The time was probably somewhere between 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. As I was typing emails at my computer, I saw a figure move from the corner of my eye. Coming from the direction of the living quarters, the figure walked through the common area, past the windows, and into my boss's personal office. I was startled because I thought I was alone. But, on more than one occasion, my boss allowed his friends to stay in the living quarters without letting the employees know. We've been surprised before by these unexpected guests. "Hello," I said. No one answered, and my heartbeat increased. I stood up, walked into the common area, and approached the door of the office the figure walked into. It was shut. I really didn't want to open it to see what was going on within, but my curiosity got the better of me. I knocked. "Hello," I said again. There was no response. After some hesitation, I started to twist the knob. It didn't budge. Locked. The door was locked. I jostled the knob a bit to be sure, but it didn't move. My eyes went wide. I turned around and walked back to the living quarters. Both bedrooms were empty. The beds were made and untouched, and there wasn't a single piece of luggage to be found anywhere. After standing there in absolute surprise for a few minutes, I realized there wasn't much to be done. So I went back to my desk and continued to work as if nothing happened. I didn't share the experience with anyone. I assumed I'd just be met with eye rolls and, "Wow, that's so weird" remarks. I didn't feel threatened at all, just a little disturbed. Sometime later, my coworker mentioned that, at times, the workspace was unbearably creepy. He didn't know how I could spend as much time as I did in it alone. I said that. Not only did I not mind it, but I actually preferred it. This finally prompted me to share my story, and I delivered it in the most matter-of-fact way possible. My coworker was quiet after I finished, a rarity for him. Then he told me that it's funny I mentioned something spooky because one morning when he was there early and alone, one of the rare times he made it in before me, he noticed that a rolling coat rack where my boss stored his suits was in the common area. My coworker assumed one of the unannounced guests put it there, which again wasn't uncommon. But, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the suits moving, as if they were being slowly sorted and looked through. We shared the same office, so he had the exact view of the common area that I did. And like me, he called out, "Hello." But there was no reply, so he stood up to inspect the rack. No one was there. He too went into the living quarters, but he only found empty rooms with still-made beds and no sign of luggage. Somewhat recently, I was yet again in the office early and alone. As I walked toward the kitchen, from the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing in the doorway leading to the living quarters. But when I turned to look with my full vision, no one was there. This time, however, I didn't bother investigating. I already knew the answer I'd find. Nights ago, I was with my girlfriend and her sister in their backyard smoking in my car. We smoke often, so a few wasn't really nothing. Around 8 p.m., her sister went inside. We live in New York, the Bronx to be exact, so the sun has been setting around 7 p.m. and completely dark by 8 p.m. So now it was just me and my girl chilling. I'm rolling up. We are talking and laughing, nothing out of the ordinary. In her backyard, there's parking for about 4 cars, but they were all out, and on the one I was parked at was closest to her neighbor's fence on the right. It was facing the road, so I can see all the way down the driveway, and directly behind me was a mesh fence that you can clearly see through. Through that fence is a church. Over on my right in her neighbor's yard is a garden that you can see in. I'm saying all this to let you know I had a great view of her entire yard from the front to the back and the sides, so I could have seen anyone or anything coming easily. While we were talking out of nowhere, we both hear a whistle. About 2 seconds long, loud and clear. Immediately freaked us both out so much, so she ended up from the passenger seat onto my lap. But I was able to keep my composure and calm her down. I get her to go back to her seat. This took about 3 minutes, and we were talking about it, trying to find a logical explanation for what just happened. While we were doing this and basically calling anything paranormal not real and dismissing it as a cat, squirrel, or even my car, it happens. Again, directly in my girlfriend's ear, loud and clear. I even heard it coming from her ear area. It was as if it was ensuring us. It can hear us and could, whistling out of nowhere. My radio was off and AC on low as it was a little chilly, the windows closed tight, but it was as if the whistle was right next to her in the car. We stayed for another 20 minutes and decided she was too uncomfortable to stay there. She says weird things always happen in her house. I never really take it seriously, and I let her know that I don't believe in stuff like that. This time, though, I experienced it, and I looked and tried to think of everything to explain it, but I can't, which brings me here. Anyone know what this could mean or be? I'm more scientific than religious, so I just want an explanation, but this is a tough one. My girlfriends, her sister and brother, did put me onto some things they have experienced growing up in their house, and I found it really interesting. When they were little, they used to play hide and seek. My girlfriend, 22, would go hide in her sister's closet. Sometimes when she would go in there, she would see a pale little girl hiding with her, but she didn't get any bad vibes, so she never bothered with her. I questioned this like I question everything, and she said she was probably just too young to think much of it. When they were kids, my girlfriend's brother said he once seen a little girl running down their hallway, but thought it was one of his sister's friends. But when he couldn't find her at the end of the hall, he asked his sister, and they both confirmed they didn't have anyone over. About a month ago, around 11 p.m., my girlfriend was sitting in her living room and heard someone in the kitchen taking out stuff to make tea. But when she went to go see who it was, the stuff was just left on the stove, as if someone left in a hurry. In the morning, she asked everyone, and guess what? Nobody was making tea. Before they bought the house when she was 2, a doctor lived there, and the doctor had a daughter that was fine at one point, but after an accident she became paralyzed. You can see this throughout the house, with the door frames being bigger to accommodate a wheelchair and a ramp outside. The girl ended up dying in the house some years after her injury. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I was visiting overnight at my grandma's house. The house itself was 100 to 200 years old, in a really old and sketchy neighborhood near the border of New Jersey and New York. On the New Jersey side, the house was quite warm, but at random moments it would turn below freezing cold. I had 2 main supernatural experiences at this house. The first one was when I was heading to go shower. Both bathrooms on the first and second floor were occupied, so young little me decided to go to the basement bathroom. When I went in the bathroom, this was a long time ago, so I'm not sure, but I heard voices saying, "Not this one, not this one," increasingly becoming more aggressive. I decided just to brush my teeth instead, and immediately when I turned on the faucet, the room froze. I watched the faucet, turned on, slowly move, and turn off. That was enough for me to say bye to the basement. The second time was when I was in the bedroom on the second floor. My cousin and I were sleeping in the same room. She was 5 at the time, and the room got colder increasingly throughout the night. I woke up, probably around 1 in the morning, and all the blankets were messed up, and my cousin wasn't in the room. Here is what made me believe in ghosts. I woke up 15 minutes later, and all the blankets were back folded all clean, which, at the time, I thought was my mom. I saw a woman, in what looked like a maid's dress, she said, and I heard, "All better." I ran downstairs where my aunt, mom, and cousin were. Apparently, my mom had not gone to our room at all that night, and my cousin had saw that exact same woman. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.